I haven't slept with the curtains open since the summer of 1999. Even now, at 32 years old, I still catch myself checking the tree line behind my apartment before going to bed. Not because I think someone's out there, not exactly. It's just this feeling. Like if I look long enough into the dark, something might remember me looking back. And I know how that sounds. I know exactly how that sounds. That's why I never told anyone about the photographs. Not the police, not my ex-wife, not even the therapist I wasted 8 months pretending to talk to after the divorce. Because deep down, some part of me already knew the truth. If I said his name out loud again, he might hear it. And after what happened last October, I'm pretty sure he did. It started when my mother died. That sentence still feels strange in my mouth. Flat, mechanical, like something copied from somebody else's life. My mom and I hadn't been close in years. We talked maybe twice a month. Usually short calls, birthdays, holidays, the occasional awkward, "How have you been?" Followed by long stretches of silence. Neither of us knew how to cross anymore. Then one morning I got a voicemail from an Oregon number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. I was sitting in my car outside a Walgreens in Portland, eating cold gas station donuts, and trying to convince myself to answer emails from clients I'd been ghosting for 2 weeks. Rain hitting the windshield, coffee gone cold in the cup holder. Radio mumbling static between stations, normal life. Then the voicemail played. "Mr. Cole? This is St. Vincent Medical Center regarding your mother, Linda Cole. We need you to call us back as soon as possible." That was it. No dramatic music, no feeling in my chest, just silence. I remember staring at the steering wheel for almost a full minute while the windshield wipers dragged back and forth across the glass. Thunk, 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 like a metronome counting down to something. 3 days later, I was driving back to my hometown for the first time in almost 11 years. Blackwater, Oregon. Population barely over 6,000. Endless trees. Quiet neighborhoods. The kind of place where kids still leave bikes in front yards and people wave at strangers from pickup trucks. Or at least they used to. The closer I got to town, the more wrong everything started to feel. Not different, wrong. The roads seemed narrower than I remembered. The forests thicker somehow. Like the trees had spent the last decade leaning inward while nobody was paying attention. It was early evening by the time I reached Ashwood Lane, my childhood street. Dead-end road, 8 houses, cracked sidewalks, mailboxes leaning sideways from too many winters. The old Harrison place still had that broken basketball hoop above the garage. Mrs. Wilkes still had porcelain angels on her porch. Nothing had changed. That bothered me more than if everything had. My mother's house sat at the very end of the cul-de-sac beside the woods. 2-story colonial, faded blue paint, sagging gutters. And behind it, the tree line. God, I'd forgotten how close it was. The woods started only maybe 30 feet beyond the backyard fence. Tall pines packed so tightly together, they looked solid black, even before sunset fully disappeared. I sat in the driveway longer than I should. The porch light flickered weakly above the front door. For a second, I had this bizarre urge to lock the car doors. Like something out there might notice I'd come back. Stupid. I finally grabbed my duffel bag and headed inside. The house smelled exactly the same. Dust, old carpet, coffee grounds, and underneath all of it, that faint scent of mildew creeping up from the basement. Mary is weird like that. Smells hit harder than photographs ever can. Suddenly I was 12 again, Saturday mornings, cartoons buzzing downstairs. Mom yelling at me for leaving muddy shoes near the back door. Normal things, safe things. At least that's what I kept telling myself while unpacking. The power kept dipping every few minutes, not fully shutting off, just enough for lights to dim slightly before humming back to life. Outside, rain whispered softly against the windows. Somewhere deeper in the house, wood creaked settling noises. Old house noises. Still, I caught myself listening too carefully. Around midnight, I decided to start cleaning out the basement, mostly because I couldn't sleep. Jet lag from grief, I guess. The basement stairs groaned under my weight as I climbed down, holding my phone flashlight. The air down there felt colder, not dramatically cold, just damp enough to crawl under your clothes. Rows of old cardboard boxes lined the walls, Christmas decorations, tax records, broken kitchen appliances. My mother probably swore she'd fix someday. Then I found the plastic storage bin. Ethan, school stuff. I almost left it alone, almost, but grief makes you nostalgic in stupid ways. So I dragged the bin into the middle of the basement floor and opened it. Inside were old yearbooks, crayon drawings, baseball trophies, DHS tapes with fading labels, and photographs. Hundreds of them, Polaroids, mostly birthday parties, school trips, backyard barbecues. Pieces of a childhood I barely remembered anymore. I sat cross-legged on the basement floor, flipping through them, while rain tapped softly against the tiny basement windows. At first, everything looked normal. Then I noticed him. The photograph was from a school picnic, probably 4th grade. Kids running through grass, teachers near folding tables, cheap orange coolers everywhere, and way in the background, near the trees, a man standing perfectly still, too tall. That was my first thought. Not scary, not supernatural, just wrong proportions. He stood half hidden between the trees wearing what looked like a black suit. The image quality was grainy, but something about him made my stomach tighten immediately. I brought the photo closer to my face. The farther I looked at him, the less human he seemed. His arms looked too long, his posture too stiff, and his face. I frowned. There wasn't one, not blurry, not hidden in shadow, just blank, like somebody had smudged the features away. A pulse of static suddenly burst from somewhere behind me. I nearly dropped the photograph. The old CRT television in the corner of the basement had turned on by itself. White noise hissed softly across the dark room. I stared at it, heart thudding now. The screen flickered violently for maybe 3 seconds before shutting off again. Silence returned. Only rain, only my breathing. I laughed nervously under my breath. Jesus, old wiring, that's all, had to be. Still, when I looked back down at the photograph again, I realized something that made every hair on my arms slowly stand up. The figure wasn't looking toward the camera. He was looking directly at me, and once I noticed that Abby couldn't stop seeing him in the others. Different years, different places, always distant, always near trees, always watching, and in every single photograph, nobody else seemed to notice he was there. Around 2:14 in the morning, I found an old VHS tape labeled Ethan Birthday 99. I don't know why I decided to play it. Maybe because I wanted proof. My brain was just connecting patterns where none existed. Maybe because some part of me already remembered. The old VCR under the televisions still worked somehow. Barely. The tape hissed alive across the CRT screen in waves of static. A birthday party appeared. Kids laughing, balloons. My mother smiling somewhere off camera. The footage looked warped with age. Colors bleeding at the edges. Then the camera turned toward the backyard, toward the woods. And suddenly, the screen distorted. Violently static flooded the image. The audio stretched into this awful metallic screech. For maybe half a second, a shape appeared between the trees, tall, unmoving, watching the house, watching me. Then the tape cut to black. And somewhere upstairs, AP heard 3 slow knocks against the back door. I didn't move for what felt like an entire minute. Just sat there, staring at the black television screen, while the sound of rain crawled across the roof above me. Then the knocking came again. 3 slow taps, not loud. That somehow made it worse. I remember holding my breath without realizing it. My body had already decided something was wrong, long before my brain caught up. The basement suddenly felt too small, too dark. I grabbed the flashlight on my phone and started toward the stairs. The old wooden steps groaned beneath me as I climbed. Every sound in that house seemed amplified now. The hum of the refrigerator upstairs, the ticking clock in the hallway, the soft hiss of rainwater sliding through clogged gutters outside. By the time I reached the kitchen, the knocking had stopped. The back door stood at the far end of the room beside the sink. Still closed, still locked. I approached it slowly anyway. I don't know why. Curiosity maybe, or pride. That stupid human instinct to prove to yourself you're not afraid. The porch light outside cast this weak yellow glow across the backyard. Wet grass shimmered under the rain. Nothing there. No person, no animal. Just the woods beyond the fence. Dark, silent watching. I checked the lock twice before stepping away. That should have been the end of it. Seriously. Any normal person would have gone upstairs, turned every light on, and convinced themselves the knocks came from loose branches or old pipes, and honestly, that's exactly what I tried to do. I even laughed about it while brushing my teeth later. Good job, Ethan, I muttered to my reflection. One creepy VHS tape, and suddenly you're 12 years old again. But the thing about fear is, once it gets inside your head, it starts changing the shape of ordinary things. The hallway outside the bathroom suddenly seemed longer than before. The darkness at the bottom of the staircase felt heavier somehow, and every time the house creaked, my eyes drifted automatically toward the windows. Toward the tree line. I barely slept that night. Every time I started drifting off, I'd jolt awake convinced I heard footsteps outside on wet grass, slow dragging. Then silence again. At some point near dawn, I finally gave up and went downstairs to make coffee. The kitchen window above the sink overlooked the backyard. I avoided looking out there at first. Childish, right? 32 years old and scared of trees. The coffee machine sputtered loudly in the quiet house, while pale morning light slowly seeped through the clouds outside. Everything looked normal again. The fence, the swing set that had somehow survived 20 years of Oregon rain, the woods behind it. Normal. I almost felt embarrassed. Then I noticed something near the edge of the yard. A line of muddy footprints leading across the wet grass, straight toward the house. My stomach tightened immediately. The prints were faint but visible enough against the rain-soaked ground. I unlocked the back door and stepped onto the porch. Cold air wrapped around me instantly. The footprints started near the fence. No, not near the fence, near the trees. I followed them carefully across the yard. Each print looked strangely stretched. Too narrow, too long, like someone wearing shoes half a size too big, or feet that didn't bend correctly. The trail stopped only a few feet from the back door. That was the part that bothered me most. Not because someone had approached the house, because there were no footprints leading away. I stood there staring at the grass while rainwater dripped from the gutters overhead. My rational brain immediately started offering explanations. The rain washed the others away. Animal tracks distorted in mud. You're tired, grieving, overthinking. Still, a bee suddenly became very aware of the woods behind me. That feeling, like being observed, not aggressively, not hungrily, just patiently. I turned around too fast, nobody there. Only endless rows of wet pine trees disappearing into gray morning fog. But for half a second, I thought I saw something tall between them. A dark vertical shape standing perfectly still. Then the wind shifted through the branches and it was gone. I went back inside. Immediately after that, locked the door. Deadbolt too. And yeah, I know how ridiculous that sounds now. Because locks only matter when the thing outside follows rules. Around noon, I drove into town for groceries. Blackwater hadn't changed much over the years. Same gas station near the highway. Same diner with the flickering neon sign. Same grocery store where old people moved carts around like they had nowhere else left to be. Small towns preserve time differently, like insects trapped in amber. I was grabbing coffee creamer near aisle 6 when I heard someone say my name. Ethan? I turned and nearly didn't recognize her. Megan Wilkes. My old neighbor, a few years younger than me. We used to ride bikes together when we were kids. Now she looked exhausted in that very specific adult way people from small towns often do. Dark circles under her eyes, hair tied up carelessly, wedding ring gone. Life had happened to her. Holy shit, she laughed softly. I heard you came back. We talked awkwardly for a few minutes beside the dairy section. Mom dying, divorce, freelance work, the usual adult misery checklist. Then she glanced toward me more carefully. You okay? Yeah, I said too quickly. You look tired. I'm fine. Just haven't slept much. She nodded slowly, then her expression changed, subtle. But enough. You staying at your mom's place? Yeah. Another pause. You still back up against the woods? I shrugged. Guess so. Megan looked down at her shopping basket for a moment before speaking again. You remember those missing kids? Cold. That's the only way I can describe the feeling that hit my chest when she said that. I forced a laugh. What missing kids? There were a few disappearances around here after you left. Early 2000s mostly. The fluorescent lights above us buzzed softly. Megan lowered her voice. Parents used to blame the woods. That sounds healthy. I'm serious. Something about the way she said it made me uncomfortable immediately. Not dramatic, not conspiratorial. Just tired. Like somebody discussing a bad memory they never fully escaped. Kids would go wandering near the trails, she continued. Sometimes they came back acting strange. How strange? She hesitated. Different. I smirked nervously. That clears things up, but Megan didn't smile back. They talked about seeing somebody out there. The buzzing lights suddenly felt much louder. A man? No, she said quietly. A thing. I felt my pulse starting to creep upward again. This was insane. Urban legend crap, small-town ghost stories. And yet, part of me already knew what she was going to say next. He was tall, she whispered. That's what they all said. I stared at her. Rain tapped softly against the grocery store windows. Then suddenly, a child's voice nearby. Mom. Megan turned automatically. A little girl stood at the end of the aisle, clutching a cereal box. Maybe 6 years old. Blonde hair, rain boots, and she was staring directly at me. No, not at me, behind me. The little girl tilted her head slowly. Then she asked the question in the calmest voice imaginable. Why is that tall man following you? Everything inside my body locked up. I turned immediately. Nobody there. Only empty aisles stretching beneath fluorescent lights. A woman hurried over and grabbed the little girl's hand. Ella stopped staring. But Mom, now, they disappeared around the corner. Silence returned. I looked back at Megan. She had gone completely pale. You need to leave that house, she said. Not joking, not dramatic, terrified. I laughed again because I didn't know what else to do. This is insane, Ethan. You seriously believe some, what? Forest ghost? Urban legend? Megan stepped closer, and for the first time since seeing her again, Abby realized she was genuinely afraid of me. Or maybe afraid for me. He starts showing up after people remember him, she whispered. My stomach dropped. Because those were almost the exact words written beneath that child's drawing I hadn't even found yet. And there was no possible way Megan could have known that. None. I left the store shortly after. The rain had stopped by then, but the sky still hung low and gray over Blackwater. I remember loading groceries into my trunk while trying desperately to rationalize everything. Shared local myth. Confirmation bias, stress hallucinations, that's all this had to be. Then I noticed something folded beneath my windshield wiper. A photograph, old Polaroid, rain-speckled. My hands started shaking before I even picked it up. The image showed the woods behind my childhood home, taken at night, and standing between the trees was the same impossibly tall figure in the black suit, this time much closer. On the back of the photograph, written in faded black ink, were 4 words. "He remembers you now, that night, sometime after midnight." I woke up to the sound of footsteps circling slowly beneath my bedroom window. The footsteps stopped the second I opened my eyes. That was the first thing I noticed. Not gradually, not fading away, just gone. Like whoever had been outside knew the exact moment I woke up. I stayed completely still beneath the blankets, staring at the ceiling while my heartbeat slammed against my ribs hard enough to hurt. The room was dark, except for the faint orange glow leaking through the curtains from the porch light outside. Rain had started again, soft this time, barely more than a whisper against the roof. I checked my phone, 3:13 a.m. For some reason, seeing the exact time made everything feel worse. My body already knew I wasn't going back to sleep. Then came the sound. Creak. Slow pressure against old wood downstairs, the back door. I held my breath. Another creak followed. Not the sound of someone forcing the door open, the sound of it moving gently, like somebody testing it. My bedroom suddenly felt very far away from the rest of the house. I reached for my phone and nearly dropped it because my hands had gone numb. No signal. Of course. I stood carefully, every movement deliberate now. The floorboards beneath my feet felt impossibly loud. I don't know what I planned to do exactly. There's this irrational moment in fear where part of your brain still thinks you can control the situation if you just stay calm enough. Like terror is some kind of puzzle. I cracked the bedroom door open. The hallway outside sat in complete darkness. Only the dim glow from downstairs stretched weakly across the walls. Then I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. 3 knocks. This time coming from inside the house. A cold wave rolled through my chest so violently it almost dropped me to my knees. No. That wasn't possible. I locked that door. I know I locked it. The silence afterward felt alive, somehow waiting. Then another sound drifted upward from downstairs. Soft electrical hissing, the television. I backed away from the bedroom door immediately. Every instinct in my body screamed not to go downstairs. But something worse had already started happening. Curiosity. That's the ugly truth nobody talks about with fear. Eventually your brain stops asking, "How do I escape this?" and starts asking, "What the hell is happening to me?" I wish I'd left right then, grabbed my keys, driven until sunrise. Maybe none of the rest would have happened. Instead, AB walked toward the staircase. Slowly, the static grew louder with every step downward. By the time I reached the living room, the old CRT television was glowing white in the darkness. No image, only snow. The sound filled the room like insects crawling inside the walls. I looked toward the back door, still closed, deadbolt locked. Chain still hanging in place, but the door itself stood slightly open. Maybe an inch. Cold air leaked through the gap. I felt every muscle in my body tighten at once. Because I knew with absolute certainty AB had locked it. The static suddenly crackled violently. The television image warped. For half a second, a face appeared. Or something where a face should have been. Pale fanless, too smooth. Then the screen snapped back to snow. My breathing turned shallow instantly. I stepped backward and froze. Mud. Fresh mud smeared across the hardwood floor. Long streaks leading from the back door toward the hallway, toward the staircase, toward me. I can still remember the smell. Wet dirt, pine needles, cold rainwater. Like the forest itself had walked inside. My chest started tightening so hard I thought I might pass out. I backed toward the kitchen without taking my eyes off the hallway. Nothing moved. No sound except static and rain. Then, The lights flickered once, twice. Darkness swallowed the room for maybe half a second. And during that half second, AB saw him, standing at the end of the hallway. Impossible height, black suit, limbs hanging too low beside his body, motionless. The light snapped back on. Nothing there. I stumbled backward hard enough to slam against the kitchen counter. Pain shot through my shoulder, but I barely felt it, because deep down, some part of me knew I hadn't imagined it. The static on the television stopped abruptly. Silence, complete silence. Even the rain outside seemed quieter now. Then my phone buzzed. I nearly screamed, "No number." A text message, just one image attachment. I stared at it for several seconds before opening it. The photograph looked old, early 2000s maybe. A group of children standing near the Blackwater forest trails. One of them was me, younger, maybe 10 years old. Standing beside another boy I vaguely recognized, Dylan Mercer. My stomach dropped instantly. Dylan disappeared in 2001. Everybody in town knew that story. Search parties, police dogs, helicopters, they never found him. I remembered that much. But what I didn't remember was being there the day he vanished. My hands shook violently while I zoomed into the background of the photo. The tree's god. He was there too, tall, watching, and suddenly something inside my head shifted. Not a memory exactly. More like pressure behind a locked door. A flash, children running through woods, heavy breathing, someone crying, then darkness again. I pressed my palms against my eyes hard enough to hurt. "No," I whispered. I didn't want to remember. Whatever waited behind that door in my head, my body already feared it. The power died completely a few seconds later. Every light in the house vanished at once. The darkness felt immediate, suffocating. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far away through the mountains. I turned on my phone flashlight. The beam shook badly in my hands. That's when I heard movement upstairs. Slow footsteps crossing the second-floor hallway. My blood turned to ice. There was nobody else in the house. The footsteps continued, heavy, measured, not trying to hide. I backed toward the kitchen drawer and grabbed the largest knife I could find. Which is funny now, as if metal mattered. The footsteps stopped directly above me. Then came a sound I still hear sometimes when I wake up at night. A child laughing, soft, distorted, coming from the second floor. Every survival instinct I had screamed at me to run. But again, curiosity. That horrible human need to understand. I started climbing the stairs. The flashlight beam bounced wildly across family photographs hanging along the wall. My childhood, frozen smiles, birthday parties, Christmas mornings. All of it suddenly felt fake somehow, like memories built to hide something underneath. Halfway up the stairs, the flashlight flickered, just once. And in that brief stutter of darkness, I saw a tall shadow stretched across the ceiling above me. Too long, too thin. The light stabilized again. Nothing there. I reached the second floor, breathing so hard my chest hurt. The hallway stood empty. But my bedroom door was open now. I knew I had left it closed. Inside the room, moonlight spilled weakly through the curtains, and sitting on the bed was a cardboard box. I stared at it for several seconds, then slowly approached. Inside were dozens of drawings, children's drawings, crayon, pencil maker. Most were clearly mine. Forests, trees, houses, and him. Over and over again, tall black figure, no face standing beside children, watching through windows, waiting near trees. My pulse became deafening in my ears, because I didn't remember drawing any of them. At the bottom of the box sat one final page folded neatly in half. I opened it carefully. The drawing showed two boys standing near the woods, me and Dylan, and towering behind us, the tall man below the image, written in shaky child handwriting. "He only takes the owns, we'll see him." I felt my stomach twist violently. Then I noticed something else, another sentence beneath it. Smaller, almost too faint to read. I tried to make myself forget. A memory hit me so suddenly it nearly knocked me over. Flashlights moving through trees, police shouting names, my mother crying and me sitting silently in the backseat of her car afterward, covered in mud, unable to explain where Dylan went, because somewhere deep inside, AB already knew. The bedroom light suddenly flickered back on. The power had returned and reflected faintly in the bedroom window behind me. AB saw a tall figure standing in the hallway outside the room, watching me, completely still. I spun around instantly, nothing there. But when I looked back toward the window reflection again, he was closer. So close his head nearly touched the ceiling. And for the first time, AB realized something truly horrifying. He wasn't appearing randomly. He was getting closer every single time I remembered. And I think that was the moment he understood. I finally knew who he was. I stopped sleeping after that, not completely at first. Maybe 20 minutes here, 10 there. The kind of shallow half-conscious drifting where your body shuts down, but your brain never fully lets go. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him standing in that hallway reflection, closer, watching, waiting for me to remember more. The worst part wasn't fear anymore. It was anticipation. Like some animal instinct, deep inside me already knew something was coming, and all I could do was sit there listening to the clock count down toward it. The next few days blurred together strangely after that. Time started breaking apart. I'd look at my phone and realize 3 hours had vanished without explanation. Sometimes I'd find myself standing in rooms with no memory of walking there. Once, I woke up sitting in my car outside the Blackwater forest trails with mud covering my shoes. Engine still running, dryer's door open. No memory of leaving the house. I drove home shaking so badly I nearly hit a mailbox turning into Ashwood Lane. The woods followed me the entire drive. That sounds insane, I know, but that's exactly what it felt like. Every tree alongside the road seemed wrong somehow. Too tall, too narrow. Their shadows stretched unnaturally across the pavement beneath the gray Oregon sky. And every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, AB expected to see him standing behind the car. The house felt worse now too. Not haunted, infected. That's the only word I can think of. The air inside carried this heavy pressure that made breathing feel slightly difficult. Electronics glitched constantly. Lights dimmed whenever I mentioned Dylan's name out loud. And the static, God, the static never stopped anymore. Sometimes it came from televisions, sometimes from unplugged radios, once, horrifyingly, from inside the walls themselves. Late one night, I heard it whispering softly through the heating vents while I lay frozen in bed, staring at the ceiling. Static mixed with something almost sounding like voices. Not words exactly. More like distant conversations underwater. I started drinking after that. Cheap whiskey from the gas station near Route 6. Not enough to black out, just enough to soften the edges. Didn't help, because every time I drifted towards sleep, the dreams came back. The woods, always the woods. Tall trees swallowing moonlight whole, children's voices echoing somewhere ahead of me. And him. Standing impossibly still between the trunks waiting, not chasing, never chasing. That was what made it unbearable. He never needed to run. The fourth night, I finally decided to go through the remaining VHS tapes. I don't know why. Maybe I thought understanding the memories would weaken them somehow. Instead, it made everything worse. The basement smelled stronger now. Damp earth, rotting wood. Something metallic underneath it all. I brought down a flashlight because the overhead bulb kept flickering violently every few minutes. The tape I chose next had no label, just blank black plastic. The footage started normally enough. Backyard barbecue, summer evening. Adults drinking beer on lawn chairs while kids ran through sprinklers. The timestamp read, July 18, 2001. 3 days before Dylan disappeared. My stomach tightened immediately. The camera moved shakily across the yard until it found me and Dylan near the fence line. We looked maybe 11 years old, lawing about something. Then the audio distorted static crackled violently through the speakers, the image warped, and suddenly the camera tilted toward the woods, toward him. Even through corrupted VHS footage, his height looked impossible. He stood among the trees, perfectly motionless, while the camera trembled violently, trying to focus on him. Then something happened that made my blood run cold. The younger version of me looked directly toward the camera, not smiling anymore, terrified, and whispered. He told us not to look at him. The footage cut out instantly afterward. No transition, just black screen. I sat frozen on the basement floor, staring at my own reflection in the dead television. My breathing sounded too loud. Then, knock, 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 3 taps, upstairs. Not on the door this time, on the ceiling directly above me. I slowly raised my eyes. Another 3 knocks followed, closer now, moving across the floor upstairs. My entire body locked up because I realized exactly where the sound was headed, the basement stairs. The light overhead flickered once. Darkness swallowed the room. And in that split second of blackness, I heard footsteps descending slowly toward me. Heavy, measured, not human. The lights snapped back on. Nobody there, but the basement door upstairs now stood open. I hadn't left it open. I grabbed the flashlight immediately and backed toward the far wall. The static returned softly through the television speakers. Sss. Then came another sound underneath it. Breathing, slow, wet, too close. I swung the flashlight toward the corner of the basement. Nothing. The breathing stopped, then resumed directly behind me. I turned so fast I nearly fell. Empty space, only stacked boxes and hanging cobwebs. But something had changed. The children's drawings I'd left upstairs now covered the basement floor around me. Hundreds of them. I swear to God I don't remember how they got there. Crayon sketches scattered across the concrete like fallen leaves. Every single one showed the same thing. Tall figure, black suit, watching children from the woods, watching houses through windows, standing at the foot of beds. My chest tightened so violently, I thought I was having a heart attack. Then I noticed one drawing different from the others. Newer paper, not old, fresh. Still lying on top of the pile, I picked it up slowly. The drawing showed the basement exactly as it looked right now. The shelves, the television. Me standing in the center holding the flashlight. And behind me, him much taller than before, almost touching the ceiling. I felt something inside my stomach collapse. Because the drawing hadn't been there before. And the crayon lines looked fresh, as if somebody had just finished drawing it. The flashlight suddenly died. Complete darkness swallowed the basement. The static became deafening instantly. I heard movement around me, not footsteps. Long scraping sounds across concrete, like limbs dragging slowly through the dark. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Then somewhere inside the static, a voice finally spoke, calm male, too close to my ear. You remember now. I ran. I don't even remember deciding to move. 1 second I stood frozen in darkness. The next I was sprinting blindly toward the stairs, while panic detonated through my chest, hard enough to blur my vision. Something moved behind me. Fast, not footsteps. Wrong movement. Too smooth. Too long. I reached the kitchen and slammed the basement door shut, hard enough to shake the walls. Then I saw the back door standing open, wide open. Cold night air flooding into the house. The woods beyond the yard looked enormous now, almost alive. And standing near the fence line beneath the weak porch light was a child, small silhouette, motionless. I recognized him immediately. Dylan or something wearing Dylan's shape. My throat closed instantly. He looked exactly 11 years old. Same red jacket from the missing posters, same messy hair, but his face, His face looked stretched somehow, incomplete, like a memory decaying over time. He raised one trembling hand slowly toward the woods, not toward me, toward him. That's when I saw the tall figure standing deeper between the trees behind Dylan, almost blending into darkness itself, watching silently. And suddenly another memory slammed into me. Me and Dylan in the woods that summer night, flashlights shaking in our hands, trying to find where the strange static sound was coming from. Then seeing him standing among the trees, Dylan screaming, running, branches snapping in darkness, and me. Leaving him there, I staggered backward hard enough to hit the kitchen counter. No. But the memory kept coming. Dylan crying for help somewhere in the dark. And me hiding, too terrified to move, too terrified to go back. I had buried it. My brain buried the entire night because it was easier than living with it. The child standing outside tilted his head slowly. Then in a voice warped by static, he whispered, "You weren't supposed to remember me." The porch light exploded. Darkness swallowed the backyard instantly. And for one brief second before everything disappeared, Abby saw the tall figure standing directly behind the glass door, close enough to touch. Then every electronic device inside the house turned on at once: televisions, radios, old answering machines, all screaming static simultaneously. And underneath all that noise, children's voices began whispering my name from inside the walls. I don't remember leaving the house. That's the truth. One second I was standing in the kitchen listening to those voices crawl through the walls like insects trapped beneath wallpaper. And the next, I was running through the woods barefoot. Rain hammering down through the trees. Branches tearing across my face. Static screaming somewhere ahead of me in the darkness. I couldn't even tell you how long I ran. Time had stopped making sense by then. The forest looked wrong now, distorted, endless. The deeper I went, the quieter the world became. No insects, no wind, no birds. Just the wet sound of my breathing and the soft crunch of pine needles beneath my feet. Then even that stopped. The silence that settled over those woods wasn't natural. It felt imposed, like the entire forest was holding its breath. I slowed down eventually, not because I wanted to, because my body simply gave out. I collapsed beside an old drainage ditch, gasping so hard my chest burned. Rainwater soaked through my clothes instantly. My hands shook uncontrollably, and somewhere nearby, Apey heard children whispering. Not from one direction, from everywhere. Ethan, dot broken, like voices trapped inside old cassette tapes. I forced myself back up and turned my flashlight toward the trees. Nothing, only darkness between trunks. But the static returned again almost immediately. Hiss. Closer now. Then came the sound that still wakes me up some nights. A child crying somewhere deeper in the woods. I knew it was him before my brain even processed the voice. Ethan. The sound drifted weakly through the trees ahead of me. Please. Every instinct screamed not to follow it. But guilt is stronger than fear sometimes. And mine had been waiting 21 years for me. I stumbled toward the voice through mud and tangled roots while rain poured harder overhead. The flashlight beam jittered violently across the trees. Then I saw the clearing, small circular, surrounded by towering pines bending inward like walls. And standing in the center was Dylan. Exactly the same age he'd been the night he disappeared. 11 years old, red jacket soaked dark from rain had lowered slightly. For one impossible second, hope hit me, real hope. My brain desperately wanted him to be alive somehow, wanted reality to still function the way reality was supposed to function. Dylan, he slowly raised his head, and I immediately understood it something terrible. That wasn't a child anymore. His face kept changing, glitching almost fires, stretching unnaturally before snapping back into place. Eyes too dark, smile too wide, like something was struggling to remember what a human being looked like. "You left me here," he whispered. Rain hammered through the clearing around us. "I know," I said. My voice broke immediately. "I know." The thing wearing Dylan tilted its head slowly, then pointed behind me. I turned and finally saw him clearly, not fully. I don't think human eyes can process him completely, even now. Remembering him feels slippery somehow, like trying to hold on to a nightmare after waking up. But I remember enough, the height first. Far too tall to make sense. The black suit hanging unnaturally straight despite the rain and wind, arms extending lower than they should. And where a face should been. Nothing, not skin, not blank flesh, just absence. Like my mind physically could not render what existed there. Static exploded through the forest instantly. The flashlight flickered wildly in my hand. My ears started ringing so violently I dropped to one knee. And suddenly memories began tearing loose inside my head all at once. That summer night in 2001, me and Dylan hearing strange noises near the trails, finding old drawings nailed to trees, seeing the tall figure standing impossibly still among the woods, Dylan panicking, running, then disappearing into darkness while static swallowed the entire forest. And me, hiding behind a fallen tree while something enormous moved slowly through the woods, searching for us. I remembered Dylan screaming my name. I remembered hearing him cry for help, and worst of all, I remembered doing nothing. The thing in the black suit stepped forward slightly. No footsteps, no movement I could properly follow. It simply became closer. The pressure in the clearing intensified immediately. My vision blurred. Blood rushed loudly through my ears. Then the whispers started again. Not just Dylan now, other voices, children. Dozens of them, lights together beneath the static. Some crying, some laughing softly. Some whispering words I couldn't fully understand. And underneath all of it, one sentence repeated over and over again. "He remembers." The thing moved closer again. The trees around the clearing began trembling violently, despite the absence of wind. My flashlight burst. Darkness swallowed everything except him. Except that impossible silhouette towering ahead of me. I tried to run. My body wouldn't move, not frozen by fear. Held like the air itself had thickened around me. Then for the first time, the thing finally spoke, not aloud. Inside my head, calm, ancient, wrong. "You looked back." Pain detonated through my skull instantly. I collapsed into mud screaming, while memories flooded through me faster and faster. Children disappearing, faces erased from photographs. Parents forgetting details over time. Entire lives slowly dissolving like damaged film reels. That's what he did. Not killing, not hunting, erasing. Taking people so completely that eventually reality itself stopped remembering they existed. And the more someone remembered him, the stronger he became. I understood then why my mind buried Dylan. Why the town avoided talking about the missing children. Forgetting was survival. The thing leaned downward slightly. Too close now. I still couldn't see a face. But somehow AB knew it was looking directly at me. Then the voices stopped. The static stopped, even the rain stopped. Total silence swallowed the clearing. And somewhere far away, AB heard police sirens. The figure froze. For the first time since seeing it, AB felt something shift. Not fear, awareness. Like the thing understood too many people were approaching. Flashlights appeared faintly through distant trees. Voices shouting somewhere beyond the woods. The pressure around my body loosened instantly, and just before darkness took me completely, the thing stepped backward into the forest, slowly dissolving between the trees. Not leaving, retreating, like it knew this wasn't over yet. The last thing I saw before passing out was Dylan standing alone in the clearing, watching me silently. Then he was gone too. According to the police report, they found me wandering near Route 6 around 5 in the morning. barefoot, hypothermic, covered in mud. They said I kept repeating the same sentence over and over again. Don't let people remember him. I spent 3 days in St. Vincent Medical, under psychiatric observation, last sleep deprivation, trauma response, grief-induced psychosis. That's what they called it. Maybe they're right, honestly. I wish they were. Because when I returned to my mother's house to collect my things, something was different. The photographs were gone. Every single one. The VHS tapes too. Even the drawings had disappeared. As if none of it had ever existed. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part happened while I was packing the last box from the basement. I found an old class yearbook from 5th grade, and inside, there was a photo of me standing beside 2 classmates. One of them should have been Dylan. I know he should have been there. I remember him standing next to me, but in the photograph now, there was only empty space beside me. No Dylan, no missing child, nothing. Like he'd never existed at all. I dropped the book immediately. My hands started shaking so badly I could barely breathe. Because I finally understood. He hadn't taken Dylan into the woods. He had erased him, slowly, peccantly, until eventually even memory itself began rotting away. I left Blackwater the next morning. I haven't gone back since, but sometimes, late at night, my television still flickers with static for no reason, and every now and then, just before the screen stabilizes again, I see him standing somewhere in the background, far away near trees, watching, waiting, like he knows eventually Abe will remember too much again. And the worst part? Maybe you will now too, because once you start looking for him, you begin noticing strange things in old photographs. Tall shadows near tree lines, distorted figures standing behind crowds. Shaj your brain desperately tries to ignore. So if you ever find yourself awake at 3 a.m. and you hear slow footsteps outside your window, don't look toward the woods. Don't check the darkness. And whatever you do, if you think you see a tall man standing perfectly still between the trees, pretend you didn't. Because I don't think he takes people. I think he erases them slowly, until nobody remembers.